Hey, this is Dena. Welcome to the Den. First of all, happy Halloween! Secondly, let's talk about horror franchises for a minute. The 80s was definitely the decade for that, extending into the early 90s. Now, most of these franchises came in threes or around that. There were 3 Poltergeist movies, 4 Jaws movies, and until 1997 there were only 3 Child's Play movies. But it was the slasher films like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween that really racked up the sequels for some reason. I think it's because slasher films had just recently become mainstream and were considered edgy and new for their time, and studios were milking that for everything it was worth. And by the way, yes, I know Halloween came out in 1978, but the sequel started in the 80s, so it still counts. A lot of people will point out that with each sequel, most of these franchises got more and more ridiculous as they went on, and I wouldn't necessarily say that's a bad thing. They might not have been as good technically as the first installment, but some of them were just more fun and interesting. I mean, hell, if you were to put me on the spot and ask me what my favorite horror movies from that era are, off the top of my head, I'd probably say Child's Play 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and Friday the 13th Part 7. So why am I talking about all that? Because I think it's kind of interesting that, for me, Halloween is the rare exception. This is the one horror franchise where I am a total purist. I love the first movie and hate all of the sequels. Well, except for Season of the Witch, but that's really just a sequel in name only. There's just something about John Carpenter's Halloween that is perfect, and it didn't need any sequels. And it definitely didn't need a remake, but I'll get to all that later. I know I said that Mortal Kombat had the best opening to any movie ever. Maybe I should append that to non-horror movies. Sure, the opening to Halloween isn't as flashy and it doesn't get you excited for action, but it kind of fills you with dread. There's just something about the zoom in on that jack-o'-lantern that is so slow you almost don't notice it at first. The camera's a little shaky and the jack-o'-lantern is badly carved. Notice the cut connecting the nose and mouth, and how the mouth is asymmetrical, plus the eyes are crooked. I'm not pointing that out to nitpick, I'm saying it gives it kind of an authentic look. And then of course there's the music. It's minimalistic and repetitive, but it fits the mood really well and it's catchy. This is another one where John Carpenter did the music himself. He also did the music for They Live, which had a similar quality to it. Meanwhile, this messed up looking jack-o'-lantern is slowly advancing on you, and just as it gets really close, the lights go out, leaving only the light from its eye. And then blackness. Yeah, I think this is most likely my favorite opening to a horror movie. The movie opens in Haddonfield, Illinois, Halloween night, 1963. So say the title cards. I don't know why, but I like the use of title cards in this movie. Something about how the movie is taking its time to set the scene properly.
We are alone, aren't we?
Anyway, this couple of teenagers is clearly being stalked as they go upstairs. The stalker sneaks in the back door, somehow turns on the light while not looking and being in the middle of the room. And we see a child's hand reach into a drawer and pull out a big knife.
Will you call me tomorrow?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You can tell by the look on his face that he wasn't ever planning on calling her tomorrow. Since it's been revealed that this is a kid, maybe it'll turn out that he's playing a prank on someone.
Michael!
Nope, he stabs his sister. Yeah, don't fight back or anything, just cover your boobs and let it happen. So anyway, this kid, who we just found out is named Michael, goes outside where his parents have just come home.
Michael?
And we get this iconic shot of this 6-year-old kid holding a bloody knife with a vacant look on his face. We don't know why he did it, and we never really find out. And how appropriate that he's dressed as a clown. I'm sure it was meant to be ironic at the time, though. Fast forward to October 30th, 1978. We find out that Michael Myers is now in Smith's Grove Sanitarium, and he hasn't spoken since he murdered his sister.
Don't underestimate it,
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
if you say so.
Meet Dr. Loomis, his psychiatrist, who wants Michael to be locked up forever.
You mean you actually never want him to get out?
Never, never, never.
He seems really cold, but we find out that he has his reasons. When they get there, it turns out that the prisoners have escaped and are wandering around outside.
Shouldn't we go on up to the hospital and...
Wait.
Loomis goes to open the gate so they can continue in, and a patient jumps on top of the car. This nurse kills me. Not only does she open the window, like, what was she trying to do? Look up to see who it was? It doesn't matter. Protect yourself, idiot. But I guess she immediately dropped the cigarette that was in her hand instead of using it as a weapon to get this guy's hand away. Holy shit, were car windows more flimsy in the 70s? Seems like that should break every bone in his hand. Anyway, she manages to get away as the patient, who was of course Michael Myers, gets away in the car.
He's gone. He's gone from here. The evil is gone.
That's such an odd thing for a psychiatrist to say. I love how the music puts you just a tiny bit on edge even when nothing is happening. It's like there's just something in the air. A storm is coming. The next day we meet our protagonist, Lorie Strode. Her father sells houses and he has her drop off the key to the Myers house, revealing that she lives in the same neighborhood where the murder took place. On the way, she runs into Tommy Doyle, the kid she's going to be babysitting later.
I have to drop off a key.
Why?
Because he's gonna sell a house.
Why?
She is way more patient than me. I would have bapped that kid upside the head. I guess that's why she's a babysitter and I'm not.
You're not supposed to go up there.
Yes, I am.
She isn't afraid to go up to the door, but she probably should be. This movie has all of the scare chords. But they don't make you jump so much as make you feel a really intense sense of unease, so it's a lot more effective than when movies today try that.
I'll see you tonight.
Bye. Just that too.
Anyway, Lorie is now being stalked by Darth Myers.
I'm not responsible.
Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis is chewing someone out about Michael getting out.
Well, he was your patient, Doctor. If precautions weren't strong enough, you should have told somebody. I told everybody!
There's kind of a running theme in this movie where Dr. Loomis warns people about Michael Myers, they don't take him seriously, then when something bad happens, the blame gets put squarely on Dr. Loomis as if he hasn't done enough.
For God's sakes, he can't drive a car. He was doing very well last night.
Yeah, that never really gets explained, but at least they acknowledge it. Later, Lorie is at school, and much as I can't stand the droning voice of the teacher, I get a kick out of how what she's talking about is relevant to this story.
Fate caught up with several lives here.
Meanwhile, she looks out the window and sees, holy shit, that is creepy.
Answer the question.
Costain wrote that fate was somehow related only to religion, whereas Samuels felt that fate was like a natural element.
I can never get over how she wasn't paying attention but is able to answer the question anyway. I guess she's just that much of a nerd! Anyway, when she looks out the window again, Michael is suddenly gone, so maybe she thinks she imagined it.
Fate is immovable, like a mountain.
That's right, Lorie, you can't escape your fate. A little later, Tommy is getting out of school where some jerks are harassing him.
Don't you know what happens on Halloween? Yeah, we get candy.
I like how he smirked a little when he said that. That's right, candy. Yeah, you better run. Too bad only one of them got a scare. And now Tommy is the one being followed. And just when you think that maybe something really bad is about to happen, Michael drives off instead.
You've got to believe me, officer. He is coming to Haddonfield.
Meanwhile, poor Dr. Loomis is trying to convince the police that Michael is coming back to Haddonfield.
If you don't, it's your funeral.
Then he apparently discovers how Michael got his current clothes. The patient robes are lying around this abandoned truck, and we see a book of matches that the nurse was using in the car earlier. And a body.
Why didn't you wait for me?
We did. 15 minutes. You totally never showed.
That's not true. Here I am.
Back to Lorie, we now get to meet her friends. They're both kind of idiots, but I have to admit that I love Annie.
I thought you were babysitting tonight.
The only reason she babysits is to have a place to...
Shit. I have a place for that.
She's just so sassy. Linda, not so much.
I always forget my chemistry book and my math book and my English book and my...
Yeah, I don't think anyone is surprised that you don't care about books. You probably don't know how to read. She also says totally at least 3 times per sentence.
Oh, it's totally charted. Totally.
It's totally silly.
Yeah, it's totally dark. Totally.
People who make fun of how I talk when I'm unscripted totally need to listen to her to see how much worse it can get. Yeah, not a fan of Linda. That's okay though, like I said when I covered Nightmare on Elm Street and talked about how annoying Rod was.
Up yours with a twirling lawnmower.
I kind of consider it a slasher film staple for one character to be so annoying that you want them to die. Again though, 1 is the limit. Any more than that in the movie probably sucks. Anyway, there's that station wagon again.
Hey, jerk! Speed kills!
I hate a guy with a car and no sense of humor.
After Linda has gone home, Michael shows up again, but naturally it's while Annie is looking away, and once she looks up, he's gone.
He wants to take you out tonight.
He was standing right there.
Poor Lorie. Scared another one away. It's tragic. You never go out.
I love how quickly the conversation changes to dating or lack thereof in Lorie's case, since Annie is convinced that if a guy is stalking you, he just wants a date. To be fair, the 70s was a simpler time.
Guys think I'm too smart.
I don't. I think you're wacko. Now you're seeing men behind bushes.
So after Annie has gone home, Lorie gets another scare. And that's a good example of where a newer movie would have abused a scare cord. This would probably startle you the first time you see this movie, and it might count as a jump scare, but the lack of a scare cord means that nothing is actually happening. The movie doesn't wear out the scare cord on fake scares.
Excuse me, Lorie.
I love the snarky way he says, "excuse me," like he knows damn well that she was the one not looking. Though I don't know why he didn't move. Maybe he was trying to teach her a lesson or something. In any case, he is Annie's dad, so maybe the snark is genetic.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Trick or treat!
I guess trick-or-treating in the afternoon is a thing in some neighborhoods. I've never seen it myself, though. Lorie convinces herself that she's just being paranoid, but then... there he is again. And he's gone again. And then she gets a mysterious phone call.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Why'd you hang up on me?
But it was just Annie.
I had my mouth full. Couldn't you hear me?
Who sticks a bunch of food in their mouth while making a phone call anyway? So anyway, Annie is going to be babysitting right across the street from where Lorie is, so she gives her a ride. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis goes to visit the grave of Judith Myers, and this guy, I guess he's the one who runs the cemetery, has an interesting story.
One night he excused himself from the table. He got himself a hacksaw, and he kissed his wife and his 2 children goodbye, and then he proceeded...
Where are we?
That we never get to hear the end of. I used to think the interruption came right at that point just to kind of mess with the audience, but I actually think Dr. Loomis didn't want to hear the ending, and that's why I interrupted him.
And then he proceeded...
Where are we?
Huh?
It's kind of funny when you think of it that way.
Why do they do it? Goddamn kids.
Anyway, it turns out that the gravestone of Judith Myers is missing.
He came home.
Back to Lorie and Annie. Anytime this movie was shown on network TV, they'd always cut out this scene because they're smoking pot. But Don't Fear the Reaper is playing on the radio, which is appropriate.
I always said you'd make a fabulous Girl Scout.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think that was meant to be a compliment. So anyway, they come across Annie's dad. It turns out that someone stole a Halloween mask, some rope, and some knives from a hardware store, so we figure some kids did it.
It's hard growing up with a cynical father.
Aren't you gonna be late?
Huh?
I said, aren't you gonna be late?
He shouts, too.
They leave just in time for Dr. Loomis to show up, but the sheriff has to finish up with a robbery before he can talk to him. Now notice that station wagon at the intersection and where Dr. Loomis is looking. I love how Michael dodged that bullet. Anyway, back to Lorie and Annie again. They're back to the subject of dating and a dance that's coming up.
Well, you could ask Dick Baxter. He'd go out with you.
And Lorie lets it slip that she has a crush on a guy named Ben Tramer. And I'm going to have a counter of how many times his name comes up, despite the fact that we never see him.
I'd rather go with Ben Tramer.
Ben Tramer?
Shut up.
He's cute. Ben Tramer.
There's that station wagon again. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis has the sheriff take him to the Myers house. Supposedly no one has lived there since the murder.
Every kid in Haddonfield thinks this place is haunted.
They may be right.
However, they find a recently dead dog and we don't get to see it, but Loomis makes this comment.
He got hungry.
Ugh. Other than that, it's left completely to our imagination.
Man wouldn't do that.
This isn't a man.
Based on what they said, I'm imagining teeth and claw marks, which tells us interesting things about our killer.
It happened in here.
They enter the room where Judith Myers was killed, and Dr. Loomis seems mesmerized by it.
He could have seen inside.
I like how he's so startled he pulls his gun out.
I do have a permit.
And this is where Loomis reveals what he experienced with Michael Myers.
I met this 6-year-old child with this emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
That actually kind of reminds me of a line from Jaws.
You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eyes.
I'll get more into that later.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Anyway, the sheriff offers to alert people, and Loomis tells him that that'll just cause panic and that he should only tell his men about it. Meanwhile, Lorie is babysitting Tommy Doyle, who is apparently dressed up as an astronaut, though for some reason I always think of Luke Skywalker. I think it's the hair.
Doyle residence.
Anyway, Annie calls and...
I have big news for you.
She thinks the dog is barking at her, but we can see that it's not looking at her. Then it's revealed that Michael Myers is outside the window, and the dog quiets down as he goes away.
I hate that dog. I'm the only person in the world he doesn't like.
Well played, movie.
So what is this big news?
Wait for it.
I just talked with Ben Tramer, and he got real excited when I told him how attracted you were to him.
Meanwhile, Tommy, who is already paranoid about the boogeyman, looks out the window and sees Michael in front of the house across the street. Anne naturally freaks out.
Lorie, the boogeyman is outside, look!
But of course he's gone once Lorie looks. So Annie spills melted butter on her clothes, so naturally she undresses right in the kitchen of someone else's home, like you do.
Lindsay! I need a robe!
Lindsay doesn't give two fucks, she's got a movie to watch. By the way, said movie is The Thing, which John Carpenter would do a remake of 4 years later. Clearly he was a fan.
Lindsay! Lester's barking again and getting on my nerves again. Never mind.
Poor Lester. All he wanted was to be a good watchdog. Again, we don't see what happens to him, but from what little we do see, it seems like Michael picked him up and snapped his neck, which is pretty damn hardcore.
What about the boogeyman?
Meanwhile, Lorie tries to make Tommy feel better, and having seen the movie before, I love what she says here.
While I'm here tonight, I'm not about to let anything happen to you.
Promise?
Promise.
And she keeps that promise. So Annie goes out to the laundry room to wash her clothes, and gets locked in.
Lindsay!
For how often she calls to Lindsay for help, I begin to wonder which of them is the babysitter. But Lindsay's got a movie to watch. Fortunately, the phone rings, but Annie awkwardly tries to go out the back door, which is partly barricaded.
Hello?
Hi, Lindsay. This is Paul. Is Annie there?
Now we get another voice cameo from John Carpenter. It's a lot more innocuous than the one in They Live.
Look, just tell her it's me, okay?
Okay.
I love that she hangs up on him. She does go to get Annie, though.
Ow! Oh, my foot! I'm stuck!
I cannot overstate how much I love Annie. If she's not being snarky, she's somehow making an ass out of herself. It's like everything she does is funny in some way.
Now promise me you won't tell anybody about this.
She got stuck in the window. She'll be right here.
Go, Lindsay.
God, I've got a shirt on. That's all you ever think about.
I think that's all you ever think about.
That's not true. I think about lots of things. Now, why don't we not stand here talking about them and get down to doing them?
This is another line that they always cut out whenever this was on network TV. The scene ended with, "That's not true, I think about lots of things." That's so silly. It's innuendo, but barely. Anyway, Paul's parents are gone, so Annie is going to pick him up after dropping Lindsay off with Lorie and Tommy. While wearing just a shirt and a shawl. Stay classy, Annie. Michael clearly still has his eye on her.
Now, the horrifying conclusion to The Thing.
John Carpenter wants to make damn sure you know they're watching The Thing. In any case, Lorie's reaction to how Annie looks right now is perfect.
Oh, fancy.
This has not been my night. I got stuck in the laundry
I'll tell
room.
you something. I'd like you to call Ben Tramer and tell him that you were just fooling around.
If you watch her, I'll consider talking to Ben Tramer in the morning.
Deal.
Bye.
Bye, Annie. So Annie walks back to the car and remembers that she hadn't gotten the keys. So she gets them and then absent-mindedly just opens the car door and gets in, forgetting that it was locked before. But now the windows are fogged up, and she just starts to consider what that means when... For a simple strangling scene, her death is pretty brutal. It takes forever for her to die, and she does at least try to fight back, unlike Judith in the beginning. I love that there's no music after the initial grab. It feels like it takes even longer. Michael even gets impatient and ends up cutting her. Aw, bye Annie. You weren't the best character in this movie, but you were the most fun. And yeah, I don't know how Michael got the door open if it was locked before. They cheat with him in little ways, but it's nowhere near as bad as some later slasher films. So I am past the halfway point and the killing is really about to start, so I'm ending part 1 here. If you haven't seen John Carpenter's Halloween, please watch it before I get to part 2.